Is the FNAF movie based on the Silver Eyes? I mean, Scott said back in 2018 that he decided against making the movie based on the books.
You know, originally the script was going to be based on the books, which eventually I decided was not the way to go.
But did that end up being exactly what we got? Well, let's first go over the plot of the novel. The Silver Eye starts with Charlie, a troubled girl with a fuzzy memory of her past, as she enters her hometown for the first time in years. Having time to kill before meeting up with her childhood friends, she visits her old house. Here she reunites with her childhood toys, which are extremely sophisticated, and we learn that her father is a very skilled engineer. Later she meets up with her friends where they discuss Michael, a classmate of theirs who went missing when they were kids. John, Charlie's closest friend, asks Carlton about Freddy's, since he's the only one who never left the town. Carlton doesn't know, and the group is curious, so they decide to visit the restaurant's old location to see if it's still there. Freddy seems to be a sensitive topic for Charlie, but she is curious, so she agrees. After finding out that the restaurant is still there, they head to their hotels and prepare for a sort of remembrance for Michael the next morning. In the morning, they reunite with some more classmates, where they tell them that they revisited Freddy's and that it is still standing. The classmates want to see it, so the group returns to the restaurant. This time, one of the animatronics slashes Charlie. The next day, they return, this time being greeted by a security guard who agrees to show them around the old restaurant. Bonnie sees the security guard and starts to malfunction, and eventually so do the rest of the animatronics. In the confusion, the security guard runs off and puts on an old mascot suit before grabbing Carlton. With the animatronics going haywire, the kids leave before they notice that Carlton is missing. The next day, they talk to Carlton's dad, a police detective who scolds them for going to Freddy's after what had happened there. Mr. Burke makes light of the situation, which causes the children to return to look for Carlton themselves. We find out that the security guard who captured Carlton is William Afton, and that he trapped Carlton in an extremely dangerous Springlock suit. The kids return to find the front door is welded shut, so they enter through a vent. Charlie finds Carlton and luckily knows how to operate Springlocks. She frees him from the suit just as its Springlock snaps shut. Carlton tells Charlie that the missing kids possess the animatronics, as he met Golden Freddy, who he believes is their late classmate Michael. As the kids are about to leave, William grabs Charlie, but she reaches behind her head and activates the Springlocks in his suit, killing him. Now, how much of this lines up with the movie? Well, Mike Smith being a security guard hired to work the night shift has nothing to do with the Silver Eyes, but comes straight out of FNAF 1. In FNAF 1, Mike Smith works 7 nights at Freddy's until he's fired for odor and tampering with the animatronics. Now, in the movie, Mike isn't necessarily fired, but he is certainly less welcome after he meddles with the secrets of the animatronics.
You couldn't just leave it alone, could you?
In the Silver Eyes, the kids meet William, who's pretending to be a security guard named Dave. Dave brings them into Freddy's, and although he acts naive, he clearly knows a lot about Freddy's and how to operate its machinery. This is very similar to the beginning of the movie. Mike meets William, who's pretending to be a career counselor named Steve. Like Dave, Steve seems to know a lot more about the restaurant that he lets on, as he's hiding his history. This is definitely a strong indicator that William Afton's character in the FNAF movie is based on his character from the Silver Eyes. Remember the part in the Silver Eyes when William causes the animatronics to malfunction and he captures Carlton in the confusion? Well, that's very similar to the part in the FNAF movie when, presumably controlled by William, the animatronics attack Mike, and while he's unconscious, they capture Abby and try to put her into a Springlock suit, but with less focus on preservation. See, the intentions behind the captures differ. In the Silver Eyes, William captures Carlton himself and warns him not to trip the Springlocks, whereas in the movie, the animatronics seem to capture Abby for the purpose of killing her. I also have a theory that William's involvement in Abby's capture was limited. Cassidy, the most defiant of the missing children, seems to be the one who orchestrates the whole plan of turning Abby into one of them, and William only mentions the idea when he says, "The little ones tell me you have a sister. She will love it here." This makes me think that William is allowing them to kill Abby but not telling them to. Either way, while the events of both sources play out similarly, the motives behind each vary. Now, the end of the Silver Eyes shows William grabbing Charlie, and she reaches behind his head to trip the Springlocks in his suit, seemingly killing him. So, is this how William dies in the movie? No. William Afton's death in the movie is a lot more like the game's depiction, where he is confronted by his victims and his suit malfunctions due to his own hubris. In the movie, William scolds the spirits before they attack him, whereas in the games, he thinks hiding in his mascot suit will save him, and he dies as a result of his hysterical laughter and excessive movement. Now, before we dismiss this as a coincidence where the movie and the books almost align, there's one more detail I should mention. William Afton didn't really die at this point in the Silver Eyes. Of course, he never really dies, but this is actually important to the story. In the third book in the trilogy, the Fourth Closet, William is still alive and he's trying to transfer his spirit into an animatronic. In order to finally defeat him, Carlton draws a picture of Spring Bonnie killing the children and shows it to them, causing them to realize that William is not their friend. Now, this is almost exactly what happens to William in the movie, with Abby drawing a picture that makes the spirits aware of William's true identity. Although it happens at a different point in the books, these events are practically identical. The Silver Eyes also shows us that the animatronics are not evil by nature. They have confused loyalties and are somewhat under the control of William. Now, Golden Freddy may be a different case in the movie, but generally this is how the movie treats the animatronics' behavior. They are practically harmless and act like children until William Afton corrupts them with his manipulative personality. It's also interesting that in the Silver Eyes, the animatronics immediately take a liking to Jason, the youngest of the kids. This is similar to how the animatronics like Abby but stare awkwardly at Mike. Another important plot line in the Silver Eyes trilogy is Charlie's missing brother. Sound familiar? In the book, Charlie's twin brother was taken by William Afton when they were little, and the second book is largely about finding him. Now, we eventually find out that Charlie's brother was never taken, but it was actually her that was taken. Don't ask me. Anyways, initially this sounds a lot like Mike and his missing brother, who we find out was taken by William when they were young. The details regarding the kidnapping are not exactly the same, but the idea is one-to-one. Charlie even has memories of Sammy being taken, similar to how Mike keeps seeing the same dream of his brother's disappearance. Of course, there are also some shots in the movie that directly reference the book, such as Abby hiding from Foxy, staring at a wall of drawings, and the animatronics dragging William away. There's even a whole part about Balloon Boy in the second book, but let's go over some differences between the two sources. First, in the Silver Eyes, Golden Freddy is a protagonist, being possessed by the spirit of the children's old classmate, Michael Brooks. In the book, Golden Freddy reaches out to Carlton and never attacks anyone. In the movie, however, Golden Freddy is arguably the greatest threat in the film. Of course, William stabbed Vanessa and almost killed Mike, but Golden Freddy is much more prevalent throughout the film and makes a plan to kill Abby that was mere seconds away from working. He could also be the reason that the security guards end up in that Back Scratcher 9000 from SpongeBob, but it could very well be William behind that too. Golden Freddy seems to be based more on his persona from the games, with him being vengeful and having the ability to teleport and cause hallucinations. Another key difference is the lack of Charlie, the main protagonist in the book. There could be an argument made that Mike or Abby are sort of the Charlie of the movie, but that's a big stretch. Charlie has an innate knowledge of the restaurant and its engineering due to her father being Henry Emily, the creator of the animatronics. In that way, she is unique. So let's review the plot similarities between the two in order to decide if the movie is based on the book or not. The main protagonist has a missing brother who William Afton kidnapped and killed and is brought to Freddy's by William Afton, who is pretending to be someone else. During a distraction, one of the characters is taken in order to springlock them. Eventually, William is springlocked himself and he is dragged into a back room by the animatronics to die. So is the movie based on the books? Yes, I think the movie is loosely based on the events of the Silver Eyes trilogy. It isn't necessarily a movie adaptation of the Silver Eyes, but it seems to have used the book as a foundation. Of course, the characters aren't the same and there are new plot lines, but generally speaking, the movie seems to follow the book's story. Overall, the story is original. It's much more than just a copy of the Silver Eyes. Scott said back in 2018 that he decided that basing the movie on the books wasn't the way to go, and I think that he kind of stayed true to that. While the movie follows a lot of the book's story, it replaces details with either new or familiar information that we have from the games. There are several characters in the movie that aren't in the book, such as Mike and Vanessa, and completely new characters that haven't been in any FNAF media, such as Aunt Jane and Abby. By the way, Charlie's aunt in the books is named Aunt Jen. The movie adds Mike's dreams, Abby's peculiarity in connection with the kids, Aunt Jane's disapproval, William's restraint, Vanessa's trauma and defiance, and Cassidy's vindictiveness to a story that had none of it. Of course, there are fans who would have rather seen a movie more loyal to the game's lore rather than the extended universes. But in all fairness, a lot of what we know from the game's lore was eluded from the books. We didn't know who built the classic animatronics until the Silver Eyes told us it was Henry. We never had a name for the purple guy before the Twisted Ones gave us one. We didn't have a name for the sad child from Take Cake to the Children until the fourth closet showed us it was Charlie. The FNAF games are notorious for their mystery and fragmented story, with the only lore coming from pre-recorded phone calls and cryptic minigames. The games were made for entertainment, with only a secondary agenda of telling an interesting story. The books were made to tell a story. That's why it makes sense that the movie would be roughly based on the books. They're the most saturated piece of FNAF lore that we have access to. Even with the books seemingly being in their own continuity, a lot of what we see is pretty similar to the game's continuity. So while the FNAF movie takes a lot of inspiration from the books, that doesn't mean it overlooks the games. Scott knows that FNAF 1 is where most of the game's fans first became introduced to the franchise.
People who go to see the movie aren't going to want to see a retelling of the books. They're going to want to see the first game. They're going to want to see a retelling of the story that got them interested in the first place.
And he would never want to dishonor fans by forgetting that. What he did was take the best parts of the games and the books and combine them to make a new continuity using the best of each. I think Scott was also trying to be careful with how much of the game's story he's revealing. Part of what makes FNAF so interesting is that its story isn't entirely clear. I think that adapting the games to the big screen would have been problematic, as he would have had to fill in the blanks of the story that fans are still speculating about. I believe the movie serves a similar purpose to the books, to provide for people who wanted added extra stories. The movie doesn't necessarily set out to retell the game's story, nor does it recite the books. The movie became a new take on the stories we become familiar with, giving us a spin on them that keeps us guessing. Of course, we can all speculate what's to come from the sequel, but none of us really know what to expect from this new continuity.